Hello again. I've recently acquired a new addition to add to the collection. That's this CD32. I've been looking at these for a little while, but as the prices keep going up and up and up, I thought I'd grab one. I wasn't really going to do much with this just yet, but one thing I've noticed about it is there's a bit of corrosion on the back and seems to be some sort of grease or something on the case here, so I thought the best thing to do is probably have a quick look inside, make sure there's nothing too amiss with it, and just give it a bit of a wipe down and a clean. I bought this as just the CD32 unit, and it's also got the power brick with it as well. You'll see on the label here it says C65. I'd heard about this, but it's the first time I've actually seen it, because my Commodore 64 that I bought, that's come with a brick like this as well. I don't know if it's the same power outputs or not. So physically this isn't in too bad a condition. There's a small crack on the cover door for the CD drive, as you can see there, just a little crack, which is a bit of a shame. But otherwise it's not in bad condition. I've seen quite a lot on eBay and they're in terrible condition, all scratched and scuffed. This is mostly, I think, just a bit on the dirty side. All the ports are there. There's a bit of corrosion around some of the ports on the back. And you can see there, that's all greasy for some reason. I don't quite know why, but there's no bad scuffs or anything. It's got the feet on it. The labels aren't looking the best, but so yeah, not bad. Volume controls there, seems to work. It's a bit loose. Reset button. The drive door doesn't seem to stay up. I don't know if they're supposed to latch or spring loaded or exactly how that's supposed to be, but it's not the best, so that will need looking at as well. So first thing, I'm going to take this expansion cover off. Again, the screw on this looks a little bit rusty on the outside. Let's see if I can get in here. There's definitely some grease going on here. That's very sticky. So the edge connector looks to be in good condition. Definitely some corrosion on the lower part of the shield in there, around there. I think maybe something sticky or grease has been spilt on this. I don't know exactly what it is. And wipe some of it off. Maybe a case of dunking the casing in some hot water and giving it a bit of a scrub up. Again, screws just look to have a little bit of surface rust on them. It may just have been stored in a damp place or a loft or something. And this back screw looks different to the others and doesn't seem to be coming out, so that's not a good sign. Whoa. Yeah, definitely a little bit on the corroded side on that right hand side there. And again, there appears to be some form of grease in here. I see why people will use gloves. I probably should be myself really, but never mind. So we've got a ribbon cable here for this front panel controls connector thingy, and we've got a flex here for the CD drive. Let's see if I can pull that out, just gently ease it out. Well, that all appears to be intact. There's a bit of muck on it, but there's no real corrosion on here. A little bit, but not terrible. The latching mechanism here for the tray, so it looks like it should lock open and stay up. So that would have been held down by the case screws. Okay, we've got a screw down here. And another screw over here. And then one at the back here as well. And then the usual bend up of the clip required. It doesn't look like anyone's necessarily been in this before. which is possibly a good sign. Yeah, so there's 2 clips here and 2 clips there to bend up. There's another clip down here which I missed. It's disguised in all this corrosion. Not exactly ideal. Right, now that's open, we've got a bit more of a clearer look at what's what here. There's definitely a little bit of muck and stuff on the boards, but all the metal housings are all corroded. The modulator's got a lot of corrosion on there. But the rest of the board generally looks alright, apart from this area here. I've noticed, if you look over here, this label seems to be absolutely saturated in oil. Papery labels tend to go quite translucent when they've got oil soaked into them. So it looks like the board's going to need a good clean. And this ground point here where the shielding was, obviously that's caked up in corrosion. And again the same on this side. It's not the best. The back, not too bad. Okay, here the edge connector's fine. Yeah, but down here, not looking too clever under there, so I think we'll need to get the board out and take a look underneath, see what we can see. There's a bit of a bend in this metalwork here. I don't assume that's not meant to be like that, I don't know. I'm just going to try and gently ease that over a bit because it's trapping the board in. You have to watch these clips because they can easily get on the underside and start scratching the traces off. Yeah, these phono sockets, they've got these little 4 bits here and they're angled, so you can push the board in through the holes, but then to get it back out the other way it's quite difficult. So these need basically levering up to release the sockets. Yeah, so I'm having to use quite a small sort of a jeweler's screwdriver. This is really not what you're supposed to use these for, it chews them up, but it does pay to have a set of these that you are prepared to chew up for doing things like this, because you need something quite strong but still small enough to get into down the gap, but then the strength to lever the metalwork out of the way. So I'm just getting the end of that in the gap, pushing it in, then turning it and then levering upwards, and then that's sort of separating these bits away. There are 4, but the ones on this side are going to be quite difficult to get at, but once the 3 are released, I'm hoping that'll be enough to get it out. You also have to be careful you don't stab yourself, because it's very easily done. Let's see if that will come free now. Yeah, just a little bit of persuasion, but that's definitely helped release that. Let's see what we've got. Again, there's definitely some sort of an oily residue, certainly on this right hand side. But all in all, this board's looking good. Only place there's any real potential mess is down here, but it doesn't appear to be corroded. Again on this side, bit of corrosion around this ground pad, but that could be cleaned off easily enough. So in the bottom of this is a protective layer to stop the board shorting out on the bottom, and you can see that. Can you see that? I don't know if that's showing on the camera very well. It's like a puddle under there. It's just some kind of grease. I don't know what it is. Someone's tipped some baby oil in it or something, but it certainly hasn't helped. So yeah, the shielding's not brilliant, but the rest of it's not bad. So I'm just going back to the top part of the casing now, and again there's oil residue along this edge here. So I think what I'm going to do is strip out the CD drive and any other mechanical bits and this board here, and then I'll give this a clean as well. There's a metal retainer clip thing here as well, which is to screw into. So let's get this CD drive out. So that's released the drive mechanism. You can see there's a bit of corrosion on it. All these gears appear to be intact. There's some grease on here, so it's probably something else to do, re-greasing that. Otherwise okay. I assume there's some circuitry in there. So again, this needs a little bit of a wipe down, but we'll just take this PCB off of here as well while we're at it. And again, it's a bit of corrosion on the exposed steel, but we don't know where this has been stored, and that's just a variable volume control. So to detach this, it looks like I've got to open some screws here. Again, you can see, well, you could see if the camera would focus. Again, you can see that one's okay, but that one's rusted up. And you probably heard that went with a click because it was quite tightly locked in. That's quite a small screw. Okay, so that's those two screws out there. One seems to be a self-tapper, that one, and the other one more of a machine type screw. So I'm not quite sure how this now comes off. So that's released from the metal hinge. And there appears to be a metal bar that goes through this. There's a metal bar down inside there that I would assume needs to be slid out somehow. So that's the mechanism for the door. Also feels quite greasy and grubby. So down in here, you can perhaps see there's a bit of a gap in the casing there. So there's some degree of a temptation to try and pull this bar up or lever it up, but that's definitely not going to be the right thing to do, because this is attached to these either side, and these don't have that gap, so you're just going to be levering against its own, the casing against its own self. So that's definitely not the way to go. I think this bar needs to be slid somehow so that this can be released this end. Now this is the other side on the inside of the casing. There's no access to push that bar through, which is a bit of a pain really. So I've spent a little while trying to figure out how to get this out, thinking if you can slide it. There's not a massive amount of room to slide it around. I can get a small screwdriver, push it in this hole. Obviously you want one small enough to not damage this plastic thread in the casing here. Yeah, so that slid along a little bit. You can actually see, because this is corroded so much, there's an layer of corrosion on that. That's actually exposed some of the clear. But it has also popped out this side a little bit. So I think what we've got to do is somehow try and slide this bar out that way. I've tried to do this with a pair of pliers, it's difficult, and obviously I'm trying not to scratch any of the plastic work in there, so it's quite difficult to do that without causing any damage. So I'm going to hold it this way so I can pull these that way and hopefully not cause any damage. I think pushing the bar in was a bit of a mistake really. So I'm just back at this end of the drive here, and you can just see that bar sticking through. So I'm going to use a knife to try and slip down the side of here and then just push that back in. That way it won't cause any damage, and you can see that's now gone. So I'm going to attempt again to remove this bar. I think it will probably slide out where that screw thread is, hopefully. So I'm just going to grab a hold of that. No. Unfortunately, because this has got this corrosion on it, it's making it stick and making it very difficult to free it. Now one option, a little bit controversial probably, would be to drill a small hole here so that there's some way of getting at this side to push on that bar and push it through that way. Although it would have to be quite near to the top. Yeah, not something I really want to do, but I might not be having much of a choice. These don't have, these needle nose pliers here don't have a lot of grip. But obviously you need some small ones to get in here, and if they've got grip, they can damage. There we go. That shoved it along just a tiny bit then. You can see now in there the end of that bar is just on the edge of that thread now. Again, the corrosion may be what's stopping it, because it may be that the end of that bar is now slightly too big to fit through that threaded hole. It's proving to be a little bit on the difficult side. I mean, it's arguable I could just leave it, but I do want to give this a proper clean, and it's going to get soaked, so we're going to end up with water trapped in here then, and that's not going to help this, which is not already not in the best of shape. So it's not looking like I'm going to be able to get this out the easy way, which is by sliding this bar with a pair of pliers or something. And I do really want to get it out because I want to be able to give this a proper clean up, and even this bar, rub that down with something and get it back shiny and how it should be. Okay, so I've decided to operate. I don't really want to, but I think it's the only option to get this metal bar out. Now, I've got a Dremel with one of these right angle tools on, which are really useful because you can get much closer into something than you would normally be able to get. But even with that, this hole's still not really going to end up very straight. It's going to end up at a bit of an angle. So I've got to make sure that I'm enough that way and enough upwards this way towards the camera, so that when this hole gets through the other side, it's not going to end up busting out at the top of the case here. We want it to be inside that groove where it can't be seen. So what I'm going to do is push this metal bar back again through to the other side, and then that will give me something for the drill bit to at least buffer up to once I go through, so I don't start drilling the casing for the door as well. So I'm just going to stop at that and see how far we've got. I think I may have gone a bit high with that. Okay, I've got to be honest with this, I'm not too happy with that because I've ended up quite a big hole down here. If you're going to do this, you need to drill in this far corner. I started up here, which was a mistake. I was being too overcautious, not wanting the drill bit to come through near the top of the casing on this side here and bust through here. I was a little overcautious, so I mean that's not happened, so that's good, and it's not even noticeable there. So what I'm going to try and do now is push my screwdriver back through here and see if I can get it onto that metal bar and push it through, and that's gone in. And now if we go to this other end, you can see that that's now sticking out, so I should be able to get something on that now and pull it free. Yeah, and that's pulled it free, and as you can perhaps see, it's got this corrosion on it. I don't know if it's aluminium actually. It's sort of that white aluminium corrosion, and it tends to create like a textured rough surface, which makes it's going to make something like this slightly bigger than it should be, so that's going to be then difficult to slide around. So yeah, that's freed that up. That's going to be much easier to clean and maintain. There's a hole down here now, obviously, as I'll show you. It just needed to be this top bit here. Unfortunately I started too low down here, I was being overcautious. But again, you won't see this when the lid's on, whether the lid's up or down, you don't see it. It's not visible, so. And the main thing is I've not come through any of these parts of the casing. At least that now means it's easier to get the cover off and maintain it in the future. So next step, to undo this, and get this part off. Yeah, and you can see even under this there's this corrosion. So all these bits need taking off and having a good going over. You just twist that to undo that, and that's magnetic, and that's what locks the disc into place. So that's all the metal work off of this. The window looks like it's just stickied on because where there's no clear bit, the rest of this black is actually double-sided and still tacky, which is a bit naff really, but there we go. It's a shame. So that's free. This must come apart. I assume this unclips somehow. Yeah, so this clip's a bit of a pain to undo. So I'm just going to use these pliers again, the small pliers. Just squeeze the clips in towards the casing and then also push on them to try and push that through. The problem with these is they're quite likely to break. Ideally you'd want to leave this alone if you can get away with it, but as I know the spring on this is rusted up, as you can see, I thought I'd get it out and give it a clean. As you can see on there, it's covered in rusty residue, so again I'll clean that up. I should also separate these and this horrible divider, and this, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do with the shield just yet, but something needs to be done with it, that's for sure. But look at that, that's all grease or oil of some sort. Maybe the previous owner worked in a chip shop or something. So as you can see, there's a lot of residue and muck and crap come off of the rusted shielding. That all needs to be cleaned off, and there's still loads of grease in here, oil or whatever, again whatever it is. You can see that there, it's just, you can see how bad it is. So I'm going to put this in the sink, probably douse it in a bit of washing up liquid and just give it a good scrub up and a clean and a good rinse down, dry it off. I shall probably reassemble the board back in here without the shielding just temporarily, just so that it's all safe, and then come back to it again when I've got more time. Whether or not it works, it doesn't really matter at this stage because it was actually bought as untested, so that mystery will have to wait for another day. Is these caps are not looking too promising. They've got a little bit of a hump in them. This cap over here looks a bit unhappy as well. Some of these look a bit on the piss, shall we say.